Planes on a date. Ooh.
Yes.
Quackcast. This is Quackcast number 644. I'm as an ocean. With me is Tanserine. Hello.
Hello.
This week we're talking about psychopaths. These terrible, terrible things. Psychopaths where bikes ride and bike riders are on them and they're a terror to everybody. No, we're talking about actual psychopaths and the other version, which is sociopaths. So we're going to talk about that and, the media portrayal of them and how it differs from the actual portrayal, which is incredibly interesting. And but before we get into that, I have to bring up the featured comic. Featured comic was something that Kwai did this week, which means I have to do the one next week. Bugger. Okay, thank you very much for that, Kwai. It's called Oni X Fox. So Kwai is going to tell us about Oni X Fox.
Hello, this is Quackcast, and the feature I've selected for this week is Oni X Fox by Slingy, and it is rated T for teen. Set in a time of feudal Japan, there are two competing clans. The Oni clan, represented as an ogre or troll in Japanese folklore, and the Fox clan, a woodland creature. Kasago is assigned to Midori, both members of the Fox clan, to be her personal escort because he shows persistence. Unsurprisingly similar to their Fox clan name, Kasago and Midori have fiery personalities, always arguing back and forth, when the end goal is to get back to a nap. The majority of the comic pages are drawn in black and white. Chapters span 18 pages in length, except for Chapter 0, which has 5. Learn how to investigate and lure out Hot Springs ghosts, and read Oni X Fox by Slingy, rated T.
And that was Quackcast telling us about Oni X Fox. Okay. So next up we have the featured music. So Gumwallace has given us a theme to a comic called Comfort-chan, which is a really good-looking comic. So I would describe this music as a bouncing, warm piano lead rock road trip, burning down a hot highway, streaking past the scenery at a fair clip. This tune knows where it wants to go, and it wants to get there fast. So, take it away, Gumwallace, with your theme to Comfort-chan. Gumwallace with his music to Comfort-chan, which is a comic by K-Steak or Killer Steak. Can't remember. He's always been a cool guy, and he's been a member of the Duck for years and years and years and years and years. And the comic is rated E, so give it a look. Okay, so psychopaths, sociopaths, all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They had a real blossoming in pop culture I think back in the 90s, with the popularity of what was that film, Silence of the Lambs, so that really
Yeah.
gave them this huge. And what was the other one that was so popular? American Psychopath, the one with Christian Bale.
Oh, American Psycho.
Yeah, American Psycho. Yeah, so that really brought to the fore the whole psychopath in pop culture. And so American Psycho wasn't meant to be a realistic portrayal of a psychopath. It was meant to be a satire on business culture and corporate culture. So he was meant to be like a hyper corporate culture person, and the idea is, these people who do well in that realm are psychopaths. So that, more than the whole Silence of the Lambs, sort of created the mythical version of the psychopath, because people didn't see that as a satire. They looked at it as that being, oh, this is what a psychopath is.
Yeah.
And there's this anime, and it might probably based on a manga, and it's called what the hell is it called? Psychotrop or something like that. I can't remember. But the whole idea of it, okay, this is in the future. It's like slightly cyberpunk. We're in the future. People with psychopathy are treated as second-class citizens or whatever. They're not allowed to join the general population. They're kind of like almost sealed off away from them, and they're used as this kind of police in a way, and they have like chips in their head or something, or a collar that's going to make their head explode if they do anything like bad. So they're managed in a way, but because of their psychopathic traits, it means they're really good at being police or hunting down psychopaths or like hunting down criminals, because it's like a superpower, which is how the anime imagines psychopathy. And at the very head of like this society is there's an AI that manages all society and all aspects of it. But what helps the AI is there is a psychopath, because a psychopath is the only kind of person deemed able to manage humans, because this person doesn't have empathy, and he doesn't have all these emotional problems that humans do, and they're regarded as like it's a superpower. They can think better. Like psychopaths are the wolves, and normal humans are the sheep, and they manage. But it's all based on the myths of psychopaths created by pop culture, that they are more intelligent, that they have a superpower, that they have abilities that we don't. Whereas the reality is psychopaths are damaged, and they're below what normal humans are. They have less abilities. Their brains don't function as well, so they can't integrate into society. They can't understand people in the correct ways. They could be reading
in general.
They could be reading a book about a story. They could be reading a story about how people interact and how this and this happens, and they can't understand half of it because they don't have the mental ability to understand the emotional reactions and social interactions of these people. So it's a damage. It's a disability. There's no there's no advantage.
Yeah, in general. In entertainment, and I'm using this term because, from books to movies to manga, what have you, everything. Mental illness in general tends to be treated as magic powers of some sort. We had this with people in the spectrum, so autistic people.
Oh yeah, Rain Man, for example.
Yeah. Rain Man is the prime example, which is you have superpower autism. which is they take one trait that is very specific, and sometimes, and the way that they portray it, very rare, super rare, and not really all that fun when it loses the novelty of the parlor trick. And they create this super magic person out of a disability, or out of a mental illness, or out of a challenge, which is a big issue. Because if it was so cool, people would want to get mental illness. They wouldn't want to get rid of it.
We'd have pills that would give people these mental illnesses.
Exactly. So this is like, autism isn't the only one. Schizophrenia is another huge offender. Like all the geniuses with the schizophrenic brain,
Oh, and of course the fictional version of schizophrenia, which is multiple personalities. It's just not.
Oh, that's a different thing. They have paranoid schizophrenia.
Yeah, but
as the only schizophrenia that exists, and then you
but
have.
I'm just saying, like originally, like when schizophrenia came into pop culture, it was always multiple personalities, and which has nothing to do with schizophrenia.
Which has nothing to do. Yeah, absolutely. And then you have the psychopath, which
the king.
is the crown. Yeah. The psychopath is he basically is like a Professor X, but a villain in a sense.
I mean, people still don't actually understand that it is a mental condition. People imagine that that's just someone who kills people. That's just someone who and which is not like some psychopaths kill people, but it's only a very small part, a very small percentage of psychopaths that do that. They're not all serial killers.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is, and again, a huge issue, a huge problem for people that have to deal with mental illnesses in general, all the more so if they are personality disorders, because all of that, psychopath, sociopath, blah, 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 and we're going to talk about psychopaths a little more. All of these are personality disorders, which is like a very unfair thing to stigmatize people that have these things as being, the serial killers of the world, or the huge criminals, the masterminds, what have you. Whereas in reality, if you look at how a person can be pushed to murder, or how a person ends up killing people, serially or not, has very little to do with personality disorders per se. There are a lot of other factors that deal with this and determine, quote unquote, this. So you can have a person that has no personality disorder at all, and they can be the worst serial killer. And you can have a person with personality disorder, and they can be a freaking therapist, excellent at their job, and a very positive, constructive, necessary member of society. And what I mean to say by this is that the problem isn't mental illness in itself. The problem is how we deal with it, if we deal with it at all, and how it is handled in general by the environment of the person who has it. And that's all there is to it. If that makes sense. I went a little bit on a rant there because I really hate seeing this very distorted carnival version of mental illness in general, especially sociopath, psychopath. These are very sexy terms about a fantasy condition that doesn't exist in real life. So
and we have well, it comes into pop culture, and then people all think then they can diagnose sociopaths and
Oh my
psychopaths.
God,
And,
yes.
what was it, narcissists and all this kind of stuff, and that
Mm-hmm.
becomes like, I don't know, the pop culture crap about this stuff. You know, I constantly see it on Instagram. Everyone like diagnoses their exes as being narcissists and psychopaths and sociopaths. Oh, for God's sake, you have an ex. Get over it. Get over yourself. Like you.
Yeah, you could be the narcissist and not your ex,
Exactly,
you know.
but you know, you hate someone because
but
you love them. You know, it's a reversal of emotional attachment, because that's what happens in a relationship. It doesn't mean you're a psychologist and you can analyze their psychological conditions. Maybe they were addicted to you, but it doesn't mean they had these conditions.
so the thing is, and I'm going to let everyone on a little secret. We all have all the traits. And what do I mean by this? You can have a narcissistic trait and not be a narcissist. You can have a psychopathic trait and not be a psychopath. In the old version, because this does not exist anymore. You can have a sociopathic trait and not be a sociopath. So, first of all, in order to be diagnosed with something at all, you have to have a cluster of things happening all at once for a specific period of time, minimum period of time, and they have to manifest in a very specific way. Every person, you, me, you know, everybody has elements that could potentially be problematic. So when I say problematic, I mean atypical, falling outside of the normal range for behaviors that we have determined. But that doesn't make you anything, because you might have, for example, a higher level of of let me find the trait now. A higher level, um, a lower level of empathy for people, which is a very specific sociopathic trait, and not be a sociopath because you are aware, for example, that you generally don't immediately catch on to what other people are feeling, and you take steps to mitigate that. Or you may not catch on to people, but other people in your environment know that, tell you about their emotions, and you respond to them, which a sociopath wouldn't do, at least untreated. So what I mean to say is that we all have little peaks of behaviors that wouldn't be classified as typical or within the typical range, and that is okay. The problem arises when these traits prevent us from being integrated into society and living our lives without this thing being an issue, causing problems in our relationships, causing problems in the workplace, causing problems with the way that we handle and treat our own selves. If these things don't become issues, you're fine. You are not mentally ill. You are not a psychopath. You are not, oh, I am OCD because I like being neat. No, that's not how it works. You know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, people like labels and imagine that defines reality rather than it just being, you know, a degree or a part of a spectrum of behavior. People think, oh, this is me, so I must be all these things. I must be all that.
That's why we basically dissuade people from reading the DSM. The DSM is the manual where all the diagnosable mental illnesses are listed there, like a phone book. And we really don't want lay people to read these things because you are going to find everything, and I mean everything
Yeah.
in there applies
It's
to
like
you.
WebMD or horoscopes or
Yeah.
whatever. So
Everything is cancer.
yeah, exactly. When someone reads like, "Oh, I've got a bit of a cough," I'll look at WebMD. Oh my God, I've got mesothelioma. Oh, I've obviously got
Yeah.
lung cancer. That's just exactly. And unfortunately, a lot of people tend to do that. Like, I am weird in that when I look at those things, I look at the opposite. I look at, oh, that might just be like hay fever or something like that. I look at like the most common thing is obviously what I have, rather than other people tend to go for the extreme and think, yeah, that's obviously what I have. I've
Yeah.
got
Yeah,
death
yeah, yeah.
rabies from Mars.
You need to school yourself to not because it is a very seductive thing to be drawn towards the exotic, let's say, like diagnosis and stuff. And it happens to everyone. The more exotic it sounds and the more unusual this thing is for you, the more likely you are to entertain the
I'm
thought.
special because I have this thing. I'm special. Doesn't matter if that being special is actually a fatal condition if you had that stuff. But I'm special because I got this. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there is this. And if that happens a lot, then that is also diagnosable.
Oh, really?
One, for example, probable diagnosis, and one probable diagnosis, just don't immediately apply it to anyone, is Munchausen,
Oh, of course.
which is the thing.
Yeah, and
Like the more, fancy one.
funnily enough, the one we all know is only Munchausen by proxy. We don't even know about Munchausen because Munchausen by proxy has become the sexy thing. Oh, this mother said that the child has
Which
this.
is a lot rarer.
Yeah.
It's a lot rarer. Yeah.
So Munchausen is just the normal one, named after, of course, the famous story character Baron Munchausen, who invented a lot of wild and crazy things that had happened to him, which was apparently based on a real guy.
Yeah, and most people that tend to have this pattern of behavior tend to do it on themselves, not on other people.
Yeah.
And it usually is something with, like, it is a symptom in a sense that if you deal with the source, the need that creates this behavior, it tends to go away. So
Need
yeah,
for attention. But all right,
yeah.
so I suppose we got to rein it back to psychopaths. Sexy.
Okay, let's.
Sexy psychopath.
Yeah, the first thing we should say before we go into the entertainment world is that there is really no such thing as a psychopath in real life anymore. This is not a diagnosis that you can get. Definitely not according to the DSM-5. It has been its traits. It was such a big umbrella term that all the different elements of it have been reclassified in other personality disorders like narcissistic, borderline, histrionic, and I think that these are the three that make up the psychopath. What you can be diagnosed with is antisocial personality disorder, which is the sociopath. So this is the reality of the matter.
Right. Well, I mean, obviously, the fact that they're antisocial personality disorders, that's the key point, because it doesn't allow you like secret intelligence abilities in order to understand people and you hunt them down or stuff like that. These are traits that damage your ability to relate to people and understand them and socialize in a way, because humans are a social creature. We survive. Our culture everything is based on our social interactions with other people, not only within our family, but within our broader community, within our country, within, the whole planet of humans. We relate to each other, we understand what each other thinks, what each other means, emotions are relatable, all this kind of stuff. And that's just how normal humans function. And that includes psychopaths. That includes everybody, normal humans, like all your autistic people, all that kind of stuff. We're all normal humans. We all have to be able to understand each other in various ways. But so people with antisocial personality disorders are people who have that's impaired, their ability to understand and relate to other humans is damaged in some way, or not formed properly, or something hindering it. Is that right?
Yeah, that's very right. And the biggest element that we have to make sure, to separate entertainment from reality is that a sociopath or, the umbrella psychopath person, this has nothing to do with intelligence. Nothing. If anything, even if you are intelligent, and what do we mean by intelligence? Because definitions are important in these things. We mean a person that has a high ability to process information quickly. That's what intelligence is. And there are many types, blah, blah, blah. So not being able to do certain things that translate as relating to people, relating to society, reacting in ways like, for example, delayed gratification and other things that we do as part of, being members, socialized members of any society. That impairs intelligence.
Exactly. It directly impairs intelligence. Yeah, like one of the traits of psychopathy or sociopathy that I've looked up is things like poor impulse control.
Exactly. That's a big thing, yeah.
Which obviously that's you need intelligence in order to control those impulses. You're not gonna just violently react to someone if they say something bad to you, or just or whatever. That's one example of poor impulse control. But poor impulse control can manifest as any kind of way.
Yeah, or let's assume that you are a highly intelligent person. Like, you have broken the record of IQ testing, which is not a real indication of intelligence, but let's not get into that. You are this super brain, but you're also a sociopath, and you have poor impulse control. Your emotions will be keeping you from using that big brain to process what is being laid before you. So you will be reacting before you process and before you make a correct decision. So that makes you stupid. Although you have this amazing big brain, IQ, everything.
Yeah, so it completely undermines one of these myths of the psychopath in the media, in that they're so intelligent, they plan everything to the nth degree, and they stalk these people, and then they do this, and then they do that. Yeah, but the reality is they couldn't do that. A real psychopath couldn't plan in that way.
You know who does that, though? When they are talking about, that kind of psychopath, the one that stalks, the one that plans very well and ruminates in their brain to how, okay, I'm going to do this and control the behavior, predict the behavior of XY person and have them, I'm pulling the strings like a puppeteer. There is a person that does that, and that is the manipulator. And they are not psychopaths. They are people that are hugely, highly aligned and aware of other people's emotions, motivations, behavioral patterns, whether they do that instinctively or because they are trained or a mix of both, these people are anything but a psychopath in the way that we would, sociopath, sorry, in a way that we would diagnose it.
Because
All
a
right.
psychopath or a sociopath can't understand those emotions in that way, so there'd be no way for them to manipulate the people. They would. It'd be like someone who doesn't understand French trying to write something in French.
You're basically thinking, what is a psychopath? And I can understand why that would feel correct. You are just looking at an immoral manipulator. So someone who has no like no moral compass, doesn't really care whether what they do is morally upstanding or fair or correct or what have you, and they know what buttons to press. So that's who you are thinking of when looking at the TV psychopath. So, and they are a lot more prevalent than actual sociopaths and psychopaths.
Yeah, because to be a manipulator is quite an easy thing to do. First, all you have to do is because you're a you're a human who does not have like an impairment, your ability to like empathize and understand emotions of other people. So that helps you be able to understand how people are going to think and how people are going to react. And all you need to do is like have a bit of a like be in a position of leadership or have control over other people, and then you can exercise that ability to manipulate them because that gives you like a position of power, and that's what a lot of people do. That doesn't make them a psychopath, that makes them a manipulator.
No. The sneaky and terrifying thing about manipulators, in my opinion, they are the biggest menace to society, honestly, and I will die on that hill if anyone wants to debate me on this, is that you don't need to be in a position of power. As a matter of fact, the most successful manipulators are in typically and technically weak positions. And and what they do is they use this as their main weapon. They weaponize this very well, and they can like manipulate and leech, gain the power of people that are actually in power and have, or whatever. When I say in power, I mean in a family. Who is the one that is the leader, who is the one that holds the money, blah blah blah. And they can get these people to give them their power, so they get all the benefits and none of the responsibilities, let's say. So the the best manipulators usually are found in the dark corners of any constellation.
As a parasite, basically.
Yes, exactly like that. That is like, what's that movie? Sorry, my cat is.
Hello, Dimos.
So the thing is, and the biggest element, for example, in therapy, when someone comes and says certain problems and usually says, "Oh, this person is causing me X, Y, Z," that might be true, but that might also be the scapegoat. The thing that we also really pay attention to is the, let's say, quote unquote, negative space. Who is never mentioned? Who is never mentioned? Let's look at that person. Because usually this is where the problem is. Not always. And you have to be careful of this bias. Like, I have to be careful of this bias because that's where I look first. But many times, like 60-70% of the times, you will see that the person that causes the issues in a family, for example, or in a school environment, or whatever, an institutionalized official unit of people, is going to be the invisible one, the one that has managed to escape scrutiny. And that's the manipulator. And that's your psychopath. That's where the real life psychopaths quote unquote are. They are not psychopaths, by the way.
Yeah.
They are anything but.
Yeah, because
yeah.
Psychopathy would impair their ability or
Exactly.
negate
Exactly.
it. But yeah, I mean, like, funnily enough, like I had just recently, personal experience, an anecdote here. I noticed that a friend of mine was being manipulative, and I knew they were being manipulative, and like I absolutely knew. I knew like everything they were saying was manipulative, but it still worked.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter that you know this person is being a manipulator, and you know that what they're saying is manipulative. It can still work. So that's one of the
It's like
things.
magic.
Yeah, like I absolutely knew what was happening, but it still worked anyway.
Yeah. And that's another thing. I always felt that people that are trained in detecting behaviors in behavioral engineering, in a sense, although very few psychologists like this term. What we do basically is to engineer behavior for the better. Okay, so we make interventions, we help people deal with certain things, so on and so forth. But that is a key, and a key that unlocks a door can also lock it. And it feels like you have this magic power, and you have white wizards and black, like dark wizards, because I have seen psychologists wreak havoc in their own family exactly because they know what to do.
Okay.
And that is terrifying for me, honestly.
Right.
And I have seen it happen. I have seen it happen even with, like, among my professors. And I have had a lot of professors, and I have seen how they interact with their spouses. And that is freaking terrifying what they are doing. So, yeah, they are not psychopaths either, by the way.
Yeah, once you know the cues and the ability to work out what's behind something, you can take advantage of that and use it to your own advantage in ways that are unfair.
Yeah, and literally, it is something. It's great power with great responsibility, and I mean it 100%. So, but going back to the whole sociopath thing, sociopaths and people that have traits that not traits, personality disorders that fall under the psychopathic umbrella, um, are people that are easily singled out in society. They will not have stable relationships. They will not have a circle of friends that is either stable or constructive. It could be a toxic circle of friends. They have a propensity for behaviors that are self-destructive, for example. Um, they will not be the menace that, for example, the manipulator will be, because they cannot integrate very well in society.
So yeah, that means it is it's a handicap.
Yes.
Well,
through and through.
I mean, obviously, we can't totally angelicize them too much, because obviously, there have been real world serial killers who have been psychopaths, and not just serial killers.
Yeah, for sure.
Like violent criminals who have committed a lot of offenses, and they're psychopaths, and that's the reason or sociopaths, and that's the reason they do it, because it is it's a handicap that causes antisocial behavior, which is what criminal behavior is.
For example, they tend to break the law more frequently because they don't have impulse control, first of all, or because they have explosive bouts of anger and stuff like that.
And lack of empathy, which means they don't
Yeah.
care as much if they hurt someone
Yeah,
or don't
yeah.
understand what they're doing to them.
Mm-hmm.
So there are tendencies that make them less able to function within society, and that can lead to criminal behavior. So so there is a grain of truth to the criminality and like a violent nature of the psychopath or the sociopath.
Yeah. The thing is, I say that phrase a lot, but let's take the narcissist, which is the closest thing to a psychopath or a borderline.
Yeah.
Same thing. Not same thing. I mean, same levels of being close to the TV psychopath.
Right, yeah.
That's what I mean. I don't mean that they are not similar. They are different disorders. But let's take the narcissist. So the narcissist has this desperate need to be adored and to be accepted and to be to have the attention on themselves. And this comes from a very traumatic past. And when I say past, I mean very early childhood, which does not mean that there was official abuse. It could have just been like neglect or the wrong cues you were given or whatever. The point of the matter is that these people were taught super early in life, before they could talk, that if people are not paying attention to them, they are not safe.
Right.
And when you are not safe at that age, it means that it is a life-threatening condition. If no one is watching the baby may die and nobody will notice.
Yeah.
So the desperate necessity for attention is that level of visceral, even when these people are adults. So what does this get you? Like, what is in the box? This gets you a person that feels terrifying, huge anxiety when they are not being the center of attention.
Right. So they're compelled to seek attention.
Exactly. That's the narcissist.
Like
right.
A lot of us, we broaden that too much. Like, anyone in social media, they're a narcissist because they need likes. They need likes on their Facebook. They need likes on their Instagram. Mm-hmm. They must be a narcissist because they keep posting pictures of themselves. Whereas that's like just the normal part of human interaction. Yeah. We like to be noticed. We like to socialize. We might like to be popular and make friends. Whereas if it's narcissistic, that's a level up. That's the extreme version.
It is like if you don't have it, you get a panic attack. That's the level.
Yeah.
And of course, doesn't necessarily manifest as a panic attack, but it gets you to do things that after the fact, and when I say after the fact, after you cause, for example, a scene in a party, or after you attack your significant other for, I don't know, talking to a friend or whatever.
Yeah, jealousy.
Okay, now yeah. Then you say, what came over me? Why did I do this? It's not necessarily something that can be controlled without proper help and proper treatment. And that's why this is a handicap. And yes, a narcissist might end up stalking someone to see why they're not giving them the attention they want. And they might even murder the one that stands in the way of the attention that they want to get. But that doesn't mean that if you are a narcissist, you will murder someone.
Yeah.
You are more likely to ruin your life and cry in a corner. So.
Yeah, that's one of those things. It's like, the idea that all psychopaths are murderers or serial killers. It's It's a very small amount. It's like saying that all Muslims are terrorists. Like,
Exactly.
no, not at all. Never. You're just an idiot for thinking that. Yeah.
There is no, like, it's not even the reverse, like, because they try to be clever and like, not all narcissists are serial killers, but all serial killers are narcissists. No.
Yeah, exactly. There's all sorts of different reasons for serial killing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I keep going back to the whole like, oh, this super intelligence sort of thing. That's because that is so ingrained in pop culture, the intelligent. But now that goes back to what I'm trying to say is like, then people look at that in pop culture, the pop culture versions, and then people look at real serial killers and imagine intelligence on them. Yeah. And imagine those abilities, like John Wayne Gacy or I don't know, Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer, he's a really popular one. They imagine it. Oh, he must have been so like, you know, this intelligent kind of guy, like, you know, in a corner, so that like the way you were talking about a manipulator, he's like thinking and trying to do this and that. But the reality is, these people are freaking idiots. Jeffrey Dahmer was again an absolute idiot, the things he did. All these people, like John Wayne Gacy, like just an idiot.
I don't remember the, like, I have a problem matching names to the serial killing.
Right.
And because honestly, the killer themselves are not interesting to me. After I realize the pattern, like, I forget about them. It's not a good thing. Don't do it. It's an issue that I have to deal with. However, the people tend to forget that the problem with serial killers is that they can and do kill people that are not in their immediate family and friend circle. And that makes investigations a lot harder because you don't have the normal leads to go on.
The ex-wife, the dad, the mum, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Any one of us, please don't do that, but any one of us, if they decided to kill serially, and what I mean by that, it's not kill serially members of your own family, but kill random people serially. People, unless you are walking around blood spattered with a knife in your hand or something like that, it will take time for you to be found. And it hinges a lot more on how much manpower is invested in your case rather than how intelligent you are. Because it might look amazing, super intelligent and stuff, but the big thing is that a lot of the information that we need in order to deduce where to look for a killer is not available for serial killers, at least not immediately. You need like 3, 4, 5 people.
So what you're talking about is the idea that non-psychopaths or non people who would used to be described as psychopaths. So we have normal ways of interacting with each other, and these kind of people who aren't psychopaths kill other people all the time because human society is complicated and humans are complicated and do stupid things, and we do that according to typical patterns. And one of the usual things is the ways we interact with each other might cause us to want to kill someone, for jealousy. That's a typical thing. Or like someone, stole our stuff, someone we know, we want to get back at them. Revenge is something typical.
Money, relationships.
Yeah, money, relationships, all this kind of, can be many, many kind of influences. So it's someone we know and there's some cause, some motivation, and that's a typical thing. And police and psychiatrists, we can track these kind of patterns of behavior and patterns of interaction that resulted in someone killing someone. Whereas a serial killer is, and we're not talking about like psychopaths, we're talking about like serial killers. So a serial killer kills someone for other reasons, and that's not in the normal way of interacting, so it's very hard to trace. And this could be like impulsive thing, something impulsive, which is more a psychopath kind of thing, or it could be like some kind of sexual problem or whatever.
Well, for example, one of it could be acting a little bit like an addiction, in the sense that whatever need is being satisfied by killing this random person gives the serial killer a dopamine rush, which is pretty much like getting a happy hit, if you like, in your brain. So that's why they are talking about cool-off times for serial killers and stuff like that. So once this need is satisfied, for example, they like killing a woman because they feel like an alpha male, for example, or killing this X type of teenager boy because it helps them purge feelings of insufficiency, for example, from what have you. I mean, it could be anything, but whatever it is satisfying a very specific need that they have. Usually they are cowards and they cannot deal with the problem that they have within their own cluster, and they go and kill someone they don't know, which is out of sight, out of mind, doesn't change anything in their actual daily life.
Right.
So to speak.
Which makes them hard to trace.
Exactly. So the more they need the dopamine hit, the more they are going to be going out to kill. Yeah. And there are some serial killers that need to do it like once every 10 years. So good luck finding those. And because you will not even connect the two crimes together. Even if it's the exact MO, you are still going to have trouble connecting the two crimes together just because one is a cold case and will not be like immediately referenced. And the other one is something that might have happened in another, even in another country.
Yeah.
Good luck with that. So it's not because they are super intelligent that they are not found. It's because the pattern is such that if you don't know it, you cannot predict it. And that means that you cannot find who the hell it is.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah, tracing it is very hard.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it absolutely doesn't need intelligence as part of the equation. Yeah. Like you have to be far more intelligent in order to get away with a normal crime of jealousy or rage or
for sure.
Killing someone for money. You have to be far more intelligent in order to get away with that than you do a serial killer sort of crime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Because you are going to be by default in the list of suspects. And if you benefit immediately, like it's clearly obvious that you are benefiting from this death, you are going to be pushed to the top of the list. So you have to eliminate yourself from there. And that is super hard to do if you have a competent team of law enforcers investigating this, because a lot of crimes go unpunished and unsolved because you have idiots looking into it. That's a big issue as well.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, they have they already decide someone else is guilty for it.
Yeah.
We could talk about a prejudice against minorities and things like that, which is always a major issue, not just in America, which people like to imagine, where all these problems of racism stem from, but the whole world. There's a problem with people blaming minorities of all different types for crimes.
For example, I'll use a Greek example of fairly recent, um, maybe last couple of years, not more than that. We had a very big and gruesome case of a woman called Caroline being murdered, brutally murdered in her home. And I will not really go into details because I don't really like talking about these things. But let's say, like the culprit is and was her husband. However, police really, 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 really wanted the culprit to be this random immigrant that happened to be in the vicinity when the crime happened. And the reason for that is that the husband was this dashing pilot, really good looking and really stupid as well, because it was obvious that it was the husband. Um, and the other guy was this nobody immigrant that nobody really wanted to have in Greece, because there is a lot of
anti-immigrant.
Yes, that's what I'm looking for. Anti-immigrant sentiment over here. So they beat that poor guy up to a pulp to get him to confess, and then the coroner came and said, you are being idiots. Stop this. He couldn't have done certain things, and then the investigation turned toward the husband, and he was arrested. So there you have it.
Yeah, well, there you are. An example, perfect example of the sort of thing we're talking about. That, police are often idiots.
Or racist idiots.
Or classist and all this kind of stuff. It's always like a minority that is a preferred culprit for a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like, this is a topic for another Quackcast, but the whole idea, like, America's problems are the world's problems. All these things, are an American issue. Like racism is an American. Like, white people are racist just because of against black people, and
no,
that's a specific thing in America. We have racism everywhere against people who are minorities, who aren't part of the majority like grouping. This is like, not only is this an issue around the world, it's an eternal issue. There has always been racism. There's always been classism. People who hate people from different religions. It's always existed.
And skin tone sometimes is like a marker for racism, but it's not the only marker for racism, and it definitely varies with country and culture and part of the world who is being discriminated against. So, and when and why. Like talking about Greece, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, you wouldn't have any anti-immigration bias. None whatsoever. On the contrary, it was like, oh, welcome, different people. We want to get to know this different person when they're different culture and stuff like that. It was only when things started becoming overwhelming and social issues were wholly pinned and blamed on admittedly huge levels of immigration that we started having this as a pattern in Greece. So this racism thing is recent, and it's recent for a reason. So on and so forth.
Yeah, there's different cultural influences, specific cultural influences behind things. I mean, I know I like a former friend who came from Mali, and they have very specific racism issues there because that's a part, like dark African people and people with Arab descent. So in Mali and in Timbuktu, they have so the Arabs are like have racism against people who are more like the darker African people, and the darker African people have racism against people who more Arab, or any one part of the darker who have dark skin. Like if you have lighter skin, you're seen as less of a person, and the darker people, the people with very, very dark skin, are seen as more superior among the darker African people in Mali, because that's just how the culture is there. Like that's a specific thing to that place.
Yeah.
And racism is very specific depending on where you're from. It's not, it can't be generalized as in white against black, black against white, Asian against.
Oh no,
that's a nonsense.
White on white racism is a very historical thing. Black on black, Asian on Asian, what have you.
Yeah, exactly. It's very, very specific depending on where you're from, and often classism is far worse than racism within a society, especially like if we're talking about India, for example. Massive classist issues that are ingrained in society, in that you're born as part of a caste. So if you're a Dalit, well, then you're buggered.
Yeah, pretty much. But to get back to the mental illness again.
Oh, please do.
No, but these are all these issues are fascinating, and the impressions that we have are very much shaped by how sensationalized certain things are, especially like the dastardly serial killer, or the mastermind psychopath that will destroy the world or whatever. All of that shapes what people expect, and we have and this is again sometimes a self-fulfilling prophecy, in the sense that you have confirmation bias. You look to confirm this impression that you are taught from a source that has nothing to do with reality, and certain elements that are true, like for example serial killers are very hard to find, are attributed wrongly, like why they are hard to find.
Yes, exactly. And we automatically attribute it to intelligence and planning and all this kind of stuff, whereas it's just because they're not part of the normal pattern.
Yeah. And it's very much a crime of opportunity, in the sense that if you are in the wrong place at the wrong time, the serial killer will get you. Otherwise, they will never take issue with you ever. It's really, they do not plan. They do not plan. They are not that clever. They do certain steps to cover up their tracks, but their biggest asset is the fact that they are not actually related to the victims. That's the biggest asset they have.
It's just so basic.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's funny that we have to talk about serial killers in relation to psychopaths, but they're pop culturally related, in that, and yes, some serial killers are psychopaths, yes, because being impulsive and not being able to understand, other people's emotions, not being able to empathize, yes, those are things that will tend you towards that kind of behavior, or at least that does, like, that favorably fits you in the serial killer role. Because being impulsive, not being able to understand that someone else has, feelings. There we go. Those are things that, that would make it easier to kill someone.
I'm not saying a good, but a better depiction of psychopath in TV or movies or, entertainment would be, I'm trying to remember the title of that movie. It is this movie about a boy that is murderous from the beginning, and everyone knows that it is a problem, and he kills his sister's pets and stuff like that, and he eventually kills the entire family. I think it's What About Henry or I don't remember.
I don't know
how it is called. I'll Google it in a second. But nobody is fooled about what this kid is. That it is broken goods and highly problematic and dangerous and will engage in extremely harmful behavior because they are impulsive, and they are portrayed like, okay, you didn't give me my B&J sandwich or whatever it's called. I'm going to go and set fire to your favorite dress or something like that. Like this immediate retaliation, lack of regulation, all of that. So I'm going to just try and Google it now because it's a fairly old movie. And I'm Googling it. Just a second.
I've never heard of it. So we can cross off Silence of the Lambs and American Psychopath as good depictions of serial killing psychopaths.
Yeah.
They're bad. They're good movies, but they're not good at portraying what they're portraying. Which is interesting. Because a lot of people, oh my god, when those were released, they also released the floodgates of the trope of the psychopath. That just became a thing in the 90s and, beyond. Because before that, there wasn't a real, psychopath kind of thing in the media. But that also had the other effect of encouraging this new wave of everybody going, I want to research like criminal psychology. That's what I want to do. And all these bloody people wanting to do that. Oh my God, so many people.
Yeah.
Because they think it's all about like science, and they became obsessed with serial killers. And that's a big thing. And they talk endlessly about them, and we are able to name every single one. And that all came from those two movies. It changed our culture. I mean, I think that's like we should be like change our podcast immediately from the Quackcast to the Serial Killer Quackcast, because that's the most popular kind of podcast that exists.
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm a little bit distracted. I'm trying to.
That's why I'm talking over you.
Just find. Yeah.
I'm building up. I'm filling the gap.
Yeah. Anyway, oh my God. Well, it's not the movie I was thinking of, but The Good Son with Macaulay Culkin is not as good a depiction as the movie I'm thinking of, but at least it does have this. He could be also a manipulator, but take away the manipulating thing and everything else he does, that would be a better depiction of a psychopath. But the plot of the movie I'm thinking of, so if you guys can find it, because I can't right now, not very quickly, is that this mother has an older daughter, and this kid is a son that is much later, I think, or whatever. So as the kid grows, he immediately depicts this very destructive behavior when frustrated. And at the beginning, she doesn't want to believe that her kid is capable of doing certain things. But then she realizes that everything is pointing to him because he does nothing to cover his tracks. He just does it and he relishes in it.
Right.
And the more he grows up, the more the behavior becomes serious. He escalates as well. And that's the plot of the movie. It's how to control her son as he becomes adult. And yeah, it does not end very well.
Yeah, well, thinking of that, those kind of things you describe. Okay, there's a movie, The Collector, I think it's called, with Terrence Stamp starring in it. I think it was from the 1960s or 70s. So he's this person who is a collector of butterflies, and he collects them, whatever, puts a pin in them, all that kind of stuff. And this woman turns up at his house because I don't know, she runs out of petrol or something like that, knocks on his door and asks to come in and whatever. So, like, skipping through a few steps that I don't even remember, he imprisons her in a room and like won't let her go, and he basically collects her, and then she eventually dies, and then he buries her, and then when the film kind of ends, he's collecting another woman in the same way. But so that's a crime of pure opportunity, in that he doesn't stalk these people. He just, like, they turn up at his house and he just he just gets them, and he can't understand that they have feelings or they have needs or whatever, because he won't let them go, and he just keeps this person. So it's a good depiction of that kind of psychopath kind of behavior, in that this person is acting impulsively and they can't empathize. So I think that's a good portrayal.
Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's a good film, but I don't. It's funny. Okay, so it's a good portrayal. It's a good film, but it's not something that I would think is good myself, because the subject matter is not something I enjoy. You know what I mean?
So yeah, it's good, but would not recommend.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, for sure. A guy like Hannibal Lecter, he definitely is not right in the head. Okay, he's a cannibal, and he also is, if I'm not mistaken, he is a trained therapist, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
Okay, or a psychiatrist or someone, I don't remember.
Yeah,
but he's in the field, all right?
It's more probably a psychiatrist. Yeah.
Okay, so that makes it virtually impossible for him to be sociopathic, in the sense of an untreated and non dealt with sociopathy. The behavior he exhibits is definitely psychotic, but that's a different thing. And he knows how to manipulate people. So I wouldn't even call it psychotic, like, scratch that, because he has a grasp of reality, and he can definitely psychologically evaluate other people. So yeah, I would just say that he has a completely different disorder, which is the whole cannibalism thing, and he's a manipulator rather than anything else, because he, like, let's take the DSM for the symptoms. All right, so what does an antisocial guy do? Okay, yeah, he has egocentrism and self-esteem issues, that he wants to be on top and stuff like that, but he does not have empathy. He cannot be intimate. He can be both of these things in the movie. He is not irresponsible, for example. He does not take risks. He does things when he's certain that he will succeed. And that's why he had been going so long before getting caught and stuff like that. There are certain elements of a sociopath where you have like the callousness, deceitfulness, pathological personality traits, but that is not enough to diagnose him as,
A psychopath.
a sociopath. Yeah,
Oh,
or a
sociopath.
psychopath.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to have the entire package. If you have one of the categories, like for example, if you are an antagonistic guy that manipulates, is deceitful, callous, and have hostility, I'm reading off the list. Yeah, that does point to antisocial personality traits. But if you don't have any of the other things, you do not have the disorder, the
Right.
personality disorder.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, yeah.
What?
So usually movies go for the cluster A and cluster B of sociopathy. So the antagonism, what I just described, and the need to be on top of everything, and stuff like that, like being basically very egocentric and very much in need to be controlling other people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you have like 4 clusters.
Okay.
Not just.
One of the things, we're getting a bit long here, so we should start to wrap it up. But I have to say, like, okay, so one of the things that Silence of the Lambs gave us was the trope of the psychopath to hunt the psychopath, and only the psychopath is able to hunt the other psychopath, and that's what this anime was based on. Psychopaths is what it was called. So the idea is only they can understand the other ones. Only they have the special ability to understand them, which is they'd be even less able to understand otherwise.
Yeah. The only series I absolutely agree on this trope, like using one serial killer to catch the other. And I'm not even talking about psychopaths and stuff like that. Just using one serial killer to catch the other is a French miniseries called Lamont. So the praying mantis.
I know the one.
Yeah, and they go to this female serial killer, which is very rare, by the way. Female serial killers are a minority, because the other guy committing these crimes is a copycat. So they are not asking her to just, find this random serial killer. It's just a person that knows her so well that they copycat and imitate all of her crimes in the same order, everything, to the point that goes beyond, someone that researched this killer on the internet. So it makes sense to go to the original, to the OG. And
yeah, you have to.
Yeah, that's the only series where I have like bought it, let's say.
It's quite an affecting series, although I will say I find the ending of it so hilarious that it is beyond hilarious, and I won't spoil on the Quackcast. I'll say that afterwards.
I love the ending. I find it extremely suitable. Although I don't know why we will not talk on air about this, but I won't spoil it either. I find the ending perfect, honestly.
So we better wrap it up then. So psychopaths in fiction are not like actual psychopaths, and serial killers in fiction are not like actual serial killers. So we'll add them to the list of pop culture
Yeah.
myths. Right. Well, thank you very much for listening to the Quackcast to Psychocast number 644. I've got to write that down. Psychocast. There we go. Psychocast. Well, see you next week. What did we want to talk about? We wanted to talk about the AI
The
stuff.
AI.
Okay. The iCast. Okay, so we'll talk about that. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.